Joe, what do athletes wear on leap day?
What?
Jumpsuits.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Joe, where's the best place? I mean, the best place to eat on leap day?
What?
IHOP.
There you go.
Of course, it's post 2 days after leap day. But hey, it's Carnival Personnel, and I'm Jacques.
Joe.
And what do you do to celebrate February 29th around the Joe household?
Back in the old days, we used to watch Quantum Leap marathons.
I think you're making a joke, but I'm also looking at you thinking.
I remember distinctly, I think Sci-Fi Channel back maybe in 96 had a Quantum Leap Day marathon. I
don't know where I rank it, but it's ranked pretty high. I'm a big fan of 30 Rock. I don't know how vested you were in 30 Rock. Like, you know, on my celebrity wish list, it is not. I could not stress this more. It is not Tina Fey. She is not on my list. I like her a lot. Not Tina Fey. Liz Lemon, dream girl. Like, Liz Lemon is my dream girl. But they had, I'm going to say, the greatest leap day sitcom episode in the history of television. And they had created this whole guy, Leap Day. Was it Leap Day? Leap Day Williams, who lives in the Mariana Trench, and he comes out and he trades candy for children's tears. So you have to cry for him, and then and it's funny because I want to say it was 2012 that Disney did a 24-hour leap day. It was Disney every now and then will open the park for 24 hours for a special thing. And it was on Leap Day, and there were so many people like wearing it. So look it up, the Leap Day William costume that the guy Kenneth. And so this is how great the episode was. They did a mashup between A Christmas Carol, where Jack Donaghy, Alec Baldwin's character, had a Leap Day kind of Scrooged. Or, you know, kind of the ghost of Leap Day past came and visited him, and it was great. But they also, and I forget exactly how it went, but they kept cutting back to, like, Liz Lemon had never heard of this, like, Leap Day TV special that stars Jim Carrey, where he keeps turning into, it's like a takeoff of, like, the Santa Claus, where he kept turning into the Santa Claus. He keeps turning into Leap Day Williams. Like, he's walking through the living room in his, you know, in his suit to go to work, and he looks in the mirror and he has the mustache and gills coming out of his neck, and this I don't know how to describe the hat, almost like a leprechaun hat. And he, like, takes it off and he throws it away, and he turns to look in the mirror and the hat's back on his head. And they have the little bug in the bottom right screen that says USA. You know, like, and they keep cutting away to this fold. Like, I can't, it's like, how do you not know that movie? It stars Jim Carrey, and they actually got Jim Carrey to be in their inception of sitcoms. But, nice. Anyways, this is our first. And you know, breaking down the fourth wall, we're actually recording on February 29th.
Yeah. Great for us.
Are you a little excited? Of all the days we've ever recorded, we've never recorded on a leap day. So
yeah.
Happy Leap Day, Joe.
Happy Leap Day.
What do you get me? Children's tears, apparently. I'm sorry. I'll show myself up.
Let's see what happens if I just don't talk throughout the whole podcast. Lucky you guys. You know, on a it's not a sad note. I mean, it's just a fact. But the woman, Katherine Johnson, who was the NASA scientist that Hidden Figures was about, passed away. Made it to 101. And what a nice mathematical number to land on. Like a palindrome.
I know what a palindrome is. That's one of the few big words I actually don't have to look up.
Yep.
Wow.
Mom,
I had what was it? Was it the Andover zip code? 01810? I lived in a zip once. I had a zip code that was palindrome, and I felt smart telling people. I think I used it as a pickup line. But
Weird Al did a whole song with palindromes called Bob, in the style of Bob Dylan.
Did he really?
Yeah. And every single sentence, every line is a palindrome.
That guy's genius.
He is.
He is a genius. I'm going to jump ahead. But first of all, like the Hidden Figures, you haven't seen it. It was great. We're going to touch on NASA in just a bit, but interesting to bring up NASA. But Joe and I got into this conversation the other night. Andrew Dice Clay might be a genius. And I never thought those words were going to come out of my mouth. But after our conversation the other night, I did a little research. Andrew Dice Clay might be a genius.
You had them all wrong, didn't you?
I did, because I'm listening to iHeartRadio, and Joe and I had a discussion about this. It's like it's funny, like some of the bits that they haven't pulled down that maybe they should have. Like when you hear a racist bit, like it's 2020, and there was a lot of bits. I think most of their material came from the early 2000s when you could make brown people getting on an airplane joke. And a lot of them, like, Dennis Miller has a bunch of those. I'm like, yeah, that's that probably, if I was curating the playlist, that wouldn't be there.
Jeff Dunham has a terrorist dummy.
Yeah, see?
Yeah. Like I think, what's his name? Mahmed or something like that. The suicide bombing.
Wow.
Yeah. And I think that was after 9/11. So, which is apropos,
Yeah, the little ones you blow up so young. And sometimes you hear bits that just aren't funny. And I'm like, I'm not funny. I don't have to tell anyone accidentally listening to that. But when I hear stuff, I'm like, how did that? Anyways.
So what about Andrew Dice Clay?
So I called Joe, and I'm like, I just heard this bit, and it was awful. It's like, and I start describing the bit. He's like getting agitated because somebody tells him, do some of your rhymes. And he's like, I know my fucking act. I don't need your help. It's like kind of almost like he was having a breakdown. It was almost like an Andy Kaufman kind of thing. But it's a quiet club. I mean, you can hear like people putting their drinks down on the table. And then it segued into a discussion with Joe and I. It's like, why was he funny and how was he funny? And it's like, yeah, that hickory dickory, which Joe launched into answering everything like that for the next 20 minutes before I begged him to stop. I said, I will take you doing Dennis Miller at the end of everything.
Hickory dickory dock, babe. This guy's got me sweating like Nixon, babe. Cha-cha.
You got to throw the cha-cha.
The cha-cha.
And so we're talking about it. He goes, no, he put out a whole double. Joe tells me he puts out an album of his bombing, and he doesn't put out an album. It's a double album of him just bombing. And we're like, wait, he did Fort Fairlane, and then Joe starts telling a story about what TV show was he on where he was crying because he was so proud of it.
Arsenio Hall. Yeah. He was on Arsenio Hall as a guest to promote Fort Fairlane, and he kind of broke kayfabe a little bit and when he was addressing the audience because, the audience was giving him a little bit of shit. If you imagine, Arsenio's audience was probably mostly non-white and maybe had some things to say about Andrew Dice Clay's material. But I remember him addressing the audience and saying, this movie is like my Gone with the Wind, and or something like that, or my Citizen Kane, or he equated it to some monumental achievement in cinema, and he's like, I'm just so fucking proud of this movie. I'm getting emotional because I know you're just gonna fucking love it when you see it. Oh,
and maybe had they seen it, they would have, but no one went to see it.
Right.
If an Andrew Dice Clay movie falls in the woods,
and it did. I think that's where it premiered.
So I'm like, and when I hear the material, I've liked some bad comics. I like some bad comedy. I like my own stuff. But I've never been a Dice guy. And I get it, but I was always amazed how big he got. And not for a long time, but he had a window where he was big. But I'm listening to this bit on iHeart, and it's just hard to listen to. So I tell Joe tells me about it. Rick Rubin produced that album, and he did it at the Comedy Store in Los Angeles. And when he started, it was a late night thing. He purposely went in there almost after hour, like, an hour before closing time, like on a weeknight. And he had some fans when he started, but he was rude to them. And he basically drove out the people who would have cheered for him.
In the business, it's called walking them.
And it's right.
He walked the crowd.
And so he's left with 20 people who probably were, maybe tourists who were like, oh, I can't believe we're getting to see this guy for like $5 on a Wednesday night. And it hurts. It's like I said, it's like an Andy Kaufman thing, but in an almost empty quiet room. And
It's called The Day the Laughter Died, Part 2 or something like that.
And I guess Mitzi Shore went to his house like the next day and like, you can't release. That will kill your career. It will kill your career. Went gold in 4 days. In 4 days,
Wow.
It went gold. And it has since, because it was 20 years ago, sold millions of copies.
It's legendary among comedy fans because it is just like, it's so preposterous that this superstar, anti-comedian, he was like rock and roll for years, puts out this album just bombing. And how to see a comedian do well and tell really funny jokes is funny. To see a comedian that does well or has done well and eat shit in front of an audience is doubly funny.
You hear people talking about, known comics. Some nights they're just off. Or some nights they're breaking in new material and it's not going great. But they'll have a couple moments here or there. Or they'll revert back to their, I saw Jim Gaffigan shoot a special, and he was great. And a couple of his jokes didn't work, and he shot it over a few days. I'm like, oh, he probably tweaked it the next day. And then he came on and did an encore, and he did his greatest hits. He did his Hot Pockets and stuff like. But it just, hard.
And it's not like he went up there to do a prepared set and didn't get the laughs. He went up there, did his jokes, but then started to get into it with the crowd, and then became mad with the crowd, and then became contemptuous of the crowd. And that's where it gets funny. When he has complete and utter contempt for the crowd. I haven't heard the entire album. I don't know.
I don't think I could. I couldn't get through it.
Okay.
I guarantee you there's no way I would be able to sit there and listen to that much uncomfortable for that long.
Yeah.
But that I cannot believe I've 180'd. I don't want to see his regular routine, and I don't want to listen to this, but I got to give credit where credit's due. The guy, it's a genius moment.
I mean, Andrew Clay is not like, he was playing a character, though, all those years. Like, he wasn't, there's a little bit of, self-aggrandizement or, a delusion, of grandeur. But some of the grandeur was very, very real for a period of time.
I mean, he was averaging, playing in front of 80,000 people a week. He'd be doing 8 shows a week in front of places that held 10,000 people.
Right, and he started a lot of careers. Like he would have new comedians come up on tour with him, like Jim Norton or these other guys like Jim Florentine. These other kind of rude white guy comics from their late '90s. Early 2000s got their start by touring with Dice, and Dice sort of taking them under his wing. So, he's credited with that contribution to society, but he's come around in the mainstream in the past 5 years or so because he was in a Woody Allen movie. Despite some people not liking Woody Allen, he still put out well-received movies. But then he was also Lady Gaga's father in A Star Is Born. He's had turns in real bona fide,
that's
hits.
Academy Award winning movie. That's big.
Yeah. So he's had sort of a bit of a renaissance, but he's never going to have the status that he had back in the late '80s.
But yeah, like I said, I have no desire to hear his old material. But credit where credit's due. That's the only, I guess. That's the only comedy album that Rick Rubin has ever done.
I'm glad you came around a little bit on Dyson. Just when you do that 180 in your mind, do you feel the way you do, like you kind of mentioned with Andy Kaufman, where those people in the audience in the 70s who were watching him on Carson for the first time and Andy Kaufman are not thinking, oh, this is a guy doing a bit. They're actually believing this guy's from a foreign land.
And just bombing.
And falling. Right.
Today I would like to do for you the Archie Bunker. Hey, you meathead. You think about it, make me a sandwich in the kitchen. Thank you very much.
I was actually watching that this morning because there was a.
Of course you were.
Well, yeah.
What Card Sharks was?
No, it's a long story. But I was watching something else that was talking about the Jim Carrey movie with Andy Kaufman and the Man on the Moon, and that kind of got me down a rabbit hole. But yeah, that Elvis impersonation when he breaks into it on Carson, the women in the audience are like screaming. They're just loving it, and even Andy's like, "After the show, baby," like it's a great thing.
Yeah, and I can't believe I'm throwing dice in that category.
Yeah, he was a performance artist / comedian.
Loved it.
He had a bit like Bobcat Goldthwait.
Right.
That was sort of the hook in the late to mid to late 80s. If you're any sort of comic needed some sort of a voice or a hook or a gimmick or something.
Well, we talked about that. It's like we both love Sam Kinison.
Yeah.
I mean, because he was a freight train.
Yeah.
How long would that stick have lasted? How many, and would he have been able to pivot to the next thing?
Right. But then it's also like separating the artist from their art. They touch on that on Miss Maisel, where there's this really popular comedian who's like this really she plays this low class like housewife, and it's Jane Lynch who's doing the character. But then Mrs. Maisel goes to visit the comedian at her home, and it's palatial, and it's like this, gorgeous brownstone house in New York that's, and she's got servants and maids and stuff, and total 180 from the actual character, like the low class character that she portrays.
But we were talking about like comedians who passed who wouldn't have been able to go the next step. So yeah, I think that whole story blew me away. I never thought there'd be a day I'd be like, Andrew Dice Clay is a genius.
Yeah, he was
a rich genius. I mean, it went gold in 4 days.
Yes. Right. He sold out Madison Square Garden twice. Or 2 nights in a row. 2 shows in the same night or something. It was fucked up. Anyways.
So Joe and I continued comedy camp this week, and it was great. We had another Skype thing going over, and I mean, it's really helping. But, and I'm all over the map here, but I might not be all over the map, because I think this is the 4th week in a row where I've come on the podcast, and I've said the opposite of last week as far as my tour goes. And as of yesterday, the tour is off because of the coronavirus. They're starting to literally shut down the countries in the Middle East. Like on Wednesday or Thursday, Bahrain sent all the kids home from school. They've closed schools, all of these kind of things. Countries are starting to shut the border. And so then I get the phone call, and they're like, okay, so we're either going to cancel the tour or move the tour to middle of the summer or something like that, because they're hoping that when it heats up, it's an airborne thing. They can't live in heat, but now they're fine. Now they're thinking, well, maybe that's not the case. And I'm like, yeah, I can move the tour, but the guy, Bill, who's the talent, the guy who's the tour built around, I can't say that he's going to cover out another week. I will find out on Thursday. So by the next podcast, I will know if it's off, if it's on, or if we're going to Alaska. I mean, you couldn't go, okay, so we're going from Kuwait to Alaska. Little different dress, but yeah, so I'm going to continue to keep working on the material in case this does happen. If it doesn't happen this time, so it is funny because on Thursday I got the phone call saying there's a couple events that they want to do in June. Would you be able to help find a couple bands to come out? And I called our good friend John Hunt, and I'm like, do you got a passport? Is it up to date? Because he has a new band. I'm like, I called our good friend Roddy, and I'm like, hey, would you want to go? And I went to call Dan. I'm like thinking, no, he's not going to want to do this. But I did talk to him about it. Then I called some other friends of mine who are in bands, and I sent over the list. So on Thursday, I was rounding up bands. I spent the whole day getting dates, getting all their information, sending links over. And then Friday, I get the phone call saying, oh, not only do we not need these bands right now, we might not need you, but we'll let you know by Thursday. So that's, yeah. So we'll do another session of jokes. And it's been actually fun It's been fun for me. I can't speak for you. And I think a week from Wednesday is when I'm targeting doing this in front of real people.
Okay.
So,
Why the week from Wednesday?
Because they have open mic night at a little restaurant near my parents that have it.
You're not going to be ready by this Wednesday?
Maybe, if you don't have to rush out of here afterwards. Yeah, you know what? You're right. What does fucking matter? You know what I mean?
It's not going to get any better over a week's time.
It might not. You know what? It might not.
And you still have the glimmer of hope on this Wednesday that maybe you'll be doing something about it. Like you can actually perform in front of it. You haven't been told no yet.
I have not. Right. So it will be before Thursday. You're right. You know what? Seriously, thank you, Joe.
But he's not going anywhere. He's not leaving the house. He needs people to come to him.
So I watched, in jumping ahead on the TV stuff. So I watched this Amazon Prime. I binge watched. Management was working, and when I binge watch things, like she hates the way I watch TV because I'll fast forward through some stuff. Like I'm watching 8 episodes in a day, and by episode 3 or 4, I know the crux of this conversation, what's going to happen. So if it's a 5-minute scene, I'll go like the last 30 seconds of it, and sometimes it's like, oh, I should rewind this a little bit, but most of the time, it's spot on.
The ADD has gotten that bad.
It's always been that bad.
So technology has caught up with your ADD. Now you can actually do something about it.
Right. Joe, do you know what Operation Paperclip is? Have you ever heard of this?
No, I have not.
Okay. So I'm not giving a lot away, but this takes place, I can't tell, it's like 78, 79 or 80, 81, right in that wheelhouse. And it's about Nazi hunters. And I don't know exactly when the American public found out about Operation Paperclip, but it's a real thing, and this is kind of a takeoff of this. It's these Nazi hunters who, a group of Jewish people, not all Jewish people, but a group of older Jewish people in like New York who one day realize, wait a minute, that was the son of a bitch who did this at this camp, or, Operation Paperclip at the end of World War II. The Cold War with the Soviet Union started months before the end of World War II. We knew we were frenemies. That we had a common enemy, but the Soviets and the West, not just the United States, were going to go in different directions. Like, as soon as Hitler's gone, we're going to get to kicking each other's ass as soon as we're done kicking this guy's ass together. As the Allied forces started to close in, there was a mad scramble to get German scientists. A mad scramble. And it was a twofold thing. A, each side wanted these scientists, to move forward their programs. On the other hand, they wanted you not to have them. So, when as it collapsed, and we're not talking 1 or 2 or 3, we're talking hundreds. Like the entire Raytheons and Textron defense systems and trying to think of another military industrial complex here. And if you've seen World War II documentaries, which we all have, it is scary how close Germany was to the bomb. And not only were they days away from coming up with the bomb before we did, their rocket technology was years ahead of where either the U.S., the Allied forces, like they were way ahead of the Allied forces on rocket technology. So we grabbed the scientists we could, they grabbed the scientists they could, and they were brought back to the United States. And they weren't brought, back to the United States so they could wait to, go to, it wasn't The Hague, Nuremberg trials, No, they were ingrained into our society. They were basically witness relocation programs. Here's your new name. Here's your identity. And so I'm watching this documentary and I'm like, I wonder how real this is or this is. There's one, they kept flashing back to things that happened at the camp, and I was looking to see what happened at the camp and if these are true stories or if they're based on true stories. There was one thing about using human beings to play chess. And I'm like, okay, that is out of a Kurt Vonnegut novel. Now, did Kurt Vonnegut know about the story and use that in one of his stories, or did the person, know this? So either way, I'm watching it, I'm reading about it, and then I come to find out, holy fuck, holy fuck. Like, the guy who was the head of the V2 project. The V2 project was their jets, in Germany. The guy who was the head of that project, director of NASA, the first director of NASA. And here's all these pictures of Vice President Johnson, this Nazi, and Kennedy watching one of the launches in like 61, 62, kind of a test thing. And it's like, and it was his entire team that they brought over. Like, he had about 100 researchers and physicists with him. They brought the whole team over. And you get mad. You're like, holy fuck shit. It's like, I've heard these stories and I knew, but I didn't realize how many it was. But then you do a little more reading. It's like, oh, well, Sputnik, which launched like, the Russian, thing Sputnik, which went up, their first satellite. Yeah, same thing. It was all German eggheads. It was a hard watch because, man's inhumanity to man is pretty tough. But then I'm doing all this reading and it's like, okay, I'm glad we went to the moon. Okay, I'm glad we got these guys and they didn't. But we're not overlooking parking tickets. When we say these Trump rallies are Nazi rallies, these are Nazis. These are guys who didn't. They're not the German citizens who I didn't know what was going on. They weren't the Germans. I was just following orders. These were the guys who made the shit happen.
But isn't it more like Yukon Cornelius taming the Bumble? This Bumble's reformed. Look at what he can do. He can make a rocket for the United States of America.
Yeah, when you get the guys who look, Mitsubishi made the Japanese Zero. Mitsubishi made that. BMW made the weapons of war. Everybody, the Fort lines, which are. But when you're talking. Not the guys on the assembly line who wanted to find the most efficient ways to kill as many people as they could. These are the guys who are like, oh, here's how the gas chamber will work.
Yeah, so...
And then they're part of our...
And you have a problem with that? No, seriously. You have a problem with the United States using geniuses for good purposes versus evil purposes.
I'm conflicted. I have mixed feelings.
Don't be.
Okay.
Don't be. I mean, for Christ's sake, there is only a limited amount of smart people in the world. There's Iranian scientists that are developing things for good and for not so good. Doesn't mean that all Iranian scientists should be thrown into, the Caspian Sea.
No, I'm not saying...
What should they have done with... Should they just throw them in jail? It's like, you know what? Hey, you're a genius and you were kind of a Nazi, but, instead of maybe repurposing you for our for our goals and for our intentions, let's just let all your talents rot in a cell for justice.
Yeah.
Are you fucking kidding me?
Again, I'm not. Some of these people, we're not talking foot soldiers. We're talking people who sign the orders to kill hundreds of thousands of people. Mm-hmm. Again, it's not like, oh, well, this guy had a bad day or this guy shot up a mall. You know what I mean? We're talking the guys who said, we're not killing Jews fast enough. If we do it this way, instead of killing 100,000, we can kill 7 million.
I don't know. I see us using their talents for our purposes as a form of justice. And it's a form of reparations or... I don't know. I guess that's how you have to reconcile this shit because you know what? We're only on this planet for fucking 80, 100 years or whatever the fuck at a time. It makes you question, what is justice? Is justice just sort of like... is justice just punishment? Like, he killed somebody, let's kill him.
No.
Eye for an eye.
I'm not... Okay, so hypothetical. What if Hitler was a genius? I mean, the same level... What if, we're talking... Hitler had the idea of doing it. He had the idea of doing it. It's okay. Here's the thing. Trump wants to get rid of all these immigrants and have these policies, but it's Miller, the guy behind who's actually writing the policies that go, okay, he has his war against immigrants. I'm all on board with it. I'm actually going to write the policies, procedures, and put into place the machinery. If Hitler was this brilliant physicist who at the same
If
time
he was a physicist, he wouldn't be Hitler. This is the thing. We can't.
Yeah.
This is an unfair comparison. We're talking about leaders and demagogues versus actual men of science and people of science. Facts, advancement of humanity. These are things that they like. Anybody who has knowledge about the world and how things work can go in one or two directions morally. You know, you could. Oppenheimer developed the fucking bomb. It was his biggest. It was his life's biggest achievement.
biggest regret.
And his biggest regret. I am become death, the destroyer of worlds. That was his quote of another Nietzsche or something like that. But there's gonna be bad things and there's gonna be good things. So I say if it's a toss up between letting smart scientists rot in jail or being shot in the head and letting all of that knowledge go to the wayside just because of justice versus having them, hey, come to our side and, we'll give you some clemency on what you did in the past. And yeah, you were just following orders. Okay. That's the mantra. You're just following orders. But in return, you're going to make us go to the moon. Okay.
And give you houses and cushy jobs and,
I mean, it's a fucked up world.
On one hand, now that I'm talking about this out loud, it kind of makes me, when you think about Katherine Johnson. Like, if you saw Hidden Figures, you know the shit. But here's this black woman, who literally, and I love her even more now that this Nazi actually needed this black woman from America to make that dream come true. But it's like,
I guess science makes strange bedfellows as well.
When you say, oh my God, my boss is Nazi, but it was hard to see the pictures of like Kennedy and him and then not know and then last night, I'm making the boys dinner and kind of in the background and I'm watching, I'm more than half watching it, but I'm not sitting down watching it. I watched it was an interesting documentary. But the voiceover was kind of It was like a really, really good. Remember History Channel when it first started? What their documentaries were? They, PBS, but like a really good cable access one, all about the history of NASA and the 100 years behind NASA and the people who put NASA together. And it was almost like an Illuminati Masons type thing. But when you find out, it's like, oh. Well, these are the guys who started NASA who were in these organizations proudly. And it's like their teachings and stuff like that. And it's like, NASA, let's put it like this. Not surprising that the director was a Nazi.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I don't know. At some point, you just have to turn some of the shit off in your mind because you can't reconcile all of this stuff. And there really is no scoreboard at the end of the universe that says, you can only do good things all the time. No, I'm just doing good things. But like I've said, this occult thing about these rituals. NASA has a checkered past. It has a checkered past. I know. And now that we know better, I'm so glad we went to the moon. Yeah, I know. Right. So now we don't let Nazis in NASA anymore. I think. Do we? I don't know. Let's find scientists on both sides. Honestly, if there is a Nazi that's working in the United States that wants to that'll get us to Mars, all right, just don't wear your swastika around me. Keep that to yourself. No, and look, and I get it. I've worked on projects with people, or I've been on hockey teams with people I would not want to be associated with. Yeah. We won't mention any names. Nick. It's a real name. Moving on. I heard rumors that Blue Bloods, my favorite awful show. How many episodes when I was laid up with my broken ankle? How many episodes do you honestly think I probably watched in those 6 weeks? Of Blue Bloods? Of Blue Bloods. All of them. Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah. And I didn't go through it on Netflix. It was on Ion Television, and however it was programmed, you ingested it. And I never liked it, but I couldn't stop watching it. It was like my experience with, Growing Pains. Like shit that was just on. Right. When you were a kid. You just watched. You did not put Growing Pains in the same category as Blue Bloods, did you? I might have. I might, Rabbit. I might. I don't know. You're not a good person. Well, yeah, I'd rather work with it. I mean, maybe I am. But so
I looked at this list, and I'm not going to pull it out and read it, but I was like a long list of shows that were canceled, and I found a list of like every show, whether it's like canceled, coming back. And as I'm scrolling down this list, I'm like, Hawaii Five-0 has been canceled after 10 years. I'm like, what? That lasted 10 years?
Yeah, I was surprised when I read that myself. I was like, wow, that's 10 years. I don't think the original, maybe the original lasted.
I don't think it did.
I don't know. Look it up.
If there was only a device that we had, but
yeah, that's called the iPhone.
Oh,
stupid.
okay, all right. I don't think the name calling was particularly necessary, Joseph. But it's and we talk about there's just too much good TV.
Hawaii 5-0, 1968 to 1980.
Wow.
Yeah,
that was more than 10 years, right? That's more
12,
than 10.
yeah,
Okay,
like 12, 13
so
years.
wait, is 12 more than 10?
I don't know. Why don't you ask one of them Nazi scientists? Nazis.
So, did you see? Speaking of pure comedy gold, did you see Elizabeth Warren on the Colbert Report?
I saw a clip. I saw articles about it, but no, I didn't.
Dude, it was great.
Yeah.
They played a game called Guess the Billionaire, and she had to hold up a picture. Hold up a picture facing him, and he would describe it. It was hilarious. The only one she didn't get, and you could see her being puzzled by it. And it's funny how quickly, like, Stephen Colbert was like, has no personality. Looks like he cut his own bangs with, toenail clippers. And she's like, Bill Gates, like, nope, he knows everything about you. Oh, Mark Zuckerberg, it's like, and she got a bunch of them. She did not, the only one she didn't get, Scrooge McDuck. That's the only one. And then it was great where he has his whole plate of ribs, and they have this whole great thing about food. And he went down to South Carolina, and he's like, "Have you ever had a boiled peanut?" South Carolinians are the only person who ever looked at peanuts and said, that would be great damp. It's just trying all this food. He has this big plate of ribs in front of him, and he's like, "Okay, I'm a billionaire, and this is all my money. And I want all these ribs. They're my ribs. I want them. How much are you going to take away?" And there's like 10 ribs on a plate, and she takes a tiny corner off one of the ribs. He goes, "But that's my favorite part. You can't have that part. I don't want to give any, but I don't want to give that. That's my." And he grabs a fork out of her hand, and she's like, "That's universal child care, you jerk." It was really, and I'm watching that, I'm thinking, I don't know any candidate that I've seen on these, because I've seen her in other interviews, who has like empathy and real emotion, and it's funny. Like, I could see her doing a guest spot on Saturday Night Live and being funny. I'm not saying hosting.
And she won't be president.
Not saying hosting.
And she won't be president.
Not with that attitude.
Right?
Not with that attitude.
Yeah, negative Nancy, who's going to vote for Elizabeth Warren in the primaries this Tuesday in Massachusetts. Big fucking shit. I mean, I'd like her to be president. She's not gonna.
You're not over yet.
I know.
A Bernie guy came by our house. They actually, in Lowell, they opened a Bernie office, and kid came by. A kid, like mid-20s, had a nice conversation with them, and we literally had a nice exchange. I took his stuff. I'm like, I give to Elizabeth Warren. Bernie's, my number 2 guy, but. And we had this nice thing. I'm like, yeah, it's upsetting that, when people make this big feud, and we talked about how Bernie had that short-lived podcast, and she went on it. And he goes, well, maybe they made it on the same ticket together. I'm like, oh, let's hope not. He's like, why? And I'm like, if one of the two of them make it in there, they're going to need the other one in the Senate. Like, you can't lose 2 great senators. I don't want to put that at risk, And he's like, oh, I didn't think about it. Well, dude, you can have nice conversations with people, and
as long as you're all the same religion.
It can't even be the same religion. Has to be the same,
sect.
Because there's what, 48 different Protestant churches just in the town alone.
Die, heathen.
So that was, but I thought that was great. So as we're sitting here chatting, the vote's going on in Carolina now, and then Super Tuesday, and we'll see what happens. But Joe wanted to skip the awful, and I agree. I will say a couple funny, not funny things. Mick Mulvaney gave a talk the other day saying for our country to have the same amount of growth, we need more immigrants coming over to continue the growth of the economy. And I'm like, okay, that's seems not like something anyone in Trump. But I just thought like the hypocrisy. The other thing, a few weeks ago, I made the joke, and I told Joe about it. He wasn't on the thread to the F&H guys on the text exchange we have. I'm like, Zach, the Mexican, knows that the coronavirus doesn't mean you have to put an extra lime on the top of the bottle, right? Ha ha ha. Corona sales are down over 40%.
Yeah, I mean, because people really do believe that they wouldn't. You don't want to buy a Corona while the coronavirus is going on because why? I don't know, man. Whatever. I mean, not that Corona's like the best shit in the world anyway, but it's just like, it doesn't make sense. I don't know.
But I'm like,
they just don't want to get that stank on them.
Yo. We won't talk about it.
Yeah.
We'll just move on. But hopefully, I hope I don't get the coronavirus, but the coronavirus is wreaking havoc in my life. And really, isn't that what it's all about?
It is.
I put down there, and Joe didn't see the rundown until he walked in, mostly because he's lazy and he doesn't want to put the effort. And I did the rundown about 5 minutes before you walked through the door. But doesn't mean I can't deflect, Yeah. Officer, I was just sticking my dick through the hole in this fence when this sicko comes by. And, it's like, and I put down for the self-indulgent theater. I requested Paul Lynde doing the theme from the Beverly Hillbillies.
You know what? I would love to do a sing-along to a karaoke track, but we had some technical difficulties that took one of my cables that I would normally use to pump in the music to our mixer. I'm using that to record this podcast because I think my recording cable broke. So, I could sing it a cappella, but it wouldn't do it justice.
It wouldn't. But everybody, let's take about 5-10 seconds and think what it would sound like if Joe was doing Paul Lynde singing the Beverly Hillbillies. Oh, that was good.
I thought it sucked.
That was good. No,
Blue.
It might be the best one you've ever done.
Paul Lynde didn't blow as hard.
You don't know that.
As I did.
I thought it was one of your better ones. In sport, so I was reading that the XFL, the ratings have gone down a little bit, but the league says they're better than they had hoped. And I was like looking at the numbers. The highest rated game they had was right around 2 million viewers. And over 4 networks. One game was on ABC. Like all the networks are carrying. And the lowest rated game was on F1, Fox Sports 1.
FS1, yeah.
In 1 million viewers. And honestly, I just keep thinking, my kids who watch all these YouTubers who get like 20 million for doing something stupid, like having slinky races down steps, at their house. Like they have 3 big YouTubers go to one person's house and my boys will watch that for like 10, 15 minutes, 25 million views. And it's like, okay, so the cost of doing this was, I think a slinky cost about like $5 and the GoPro and all this stuff. And yeah, for 1/1,000,000th the cost to produce an NFL game, they get 10 times the views. Or an XFL game. So I don't know how the league holds on, but if
it's I think it's like movie theaters, like they're making their money in the concession stands.
Is that what it is?
Yeah, a hot dog at an XFL game, I think it's like $200. So you don't know what the operating costs are.
I do not.
But by the way, those videos, you know what? Basically, you know what those videos are? Those YouTube videos are like, I can't believe this fucking guy is like, he's fucking, playing with a slinky. He makes 25 million views. First of all, it doesn't mean he makes $25 million, but whatever. Secondly, it's a cult of personality. These are kids hanging out with friends.
Oh no, I know.
Yeah.
I get it. Like there's a couple that the boys watch that I don't mind, but there are some times where I'm like, okay, there's one YouTuber who reviews other YouTubers. I'm like, you are watching somebody watch somebody talking about what they're watching. Okay. And no, they don't get $25 million per thing. But
people are listening to us talk about what we're watching.
Shut up. There's sometimes when you point out my idiocies, can't you just pull me aside and tell me what an idiot
No,
I
have
gotta
to
do
air
right
it out.
here? Can I pull my pants back up? Are you done spanking me now?
Honestly, I mean, considering our listenership, it's like I'm pulling you aside privately to tell you. It really doesn't matter, man. Come on.
What are you doing with video games this week?
What am I doing? Not a whole lot. I'm racking my brain trying to think of what I actually played this week, and maybe it was a couple of retro games because I got that Super Nintendo controller that comes with the Switch, or that you can use on the Switch to play Super Nintendo games and Nintendo games. Yeah, I think I revisited Tetris 99 again on the Switch. A couple of Switch things. That's about it. Nothing too fancy. You?
So my little guy likes video games, but what he loves is live action role playing. And have you heard of this game, 60 Second Apocalypse?
No.
Okay. It's the graphics are what they are. They're not. It's not like a mobile game, but it's almost like a 64-bit game. And you're looking down at a house with no roof on, so you can see it moving through. And an alarm goes off. You have 60 seconds to run through the house, get as many supplies as you can, and throw them down in the. And you have a bomb shelter. You have a fallout shelter in your house. You can only carry like 4 things at once. And you got to get your wife, you got to get your son, you got to get your daughter, but your daughter takes up 3 spaces. So you got to find her, carry her, dump her in there. You got to get water. You want to get a med kit. There's an axe, a gun, ammo, like as much as you can get in 60 seconds.
Interesting.
And this is one of the reasons, like my little guy pointed out, it's like, oh, I'm going to play this, but it's mostly a reading game. And it is mostly, once that 60 seconds is over, it's just a still picture of the 4 people. And you have to say, okay, day 1, day 2, and you have to ration out the food, and this is what you got. And I watched him watching people, and they're like, oh my God, I forgot the radio, or they forgot the axe, or, they only have like 3 waters and 4. You can only get water in cups, cans of soup. So it's an interesting thing. I would suggest just watching one 5-minute link so you get an idea what it is. Joe can't tell right now, but in our podcast room, I came down here the other day. I didn't take a picture, but a video. I will post the video that I took, and I will be it with a shot from the game. He recreated this entire room. Like, he took it down, but.
Yeah.
He made the med kit. He found it. It's amazing.
So he turned this podcast room into a bomb shelter.
Like a little. Okay, see the water behind me,
yes.
and the crackers. How that's set up.
I thought that was for us.
No, it's exactly how it was set up in there. He found out that we have a small transistor radio. He took a box, wrapped it, and it's like in white just paper. He does this, and I didn't know he was doing it. I came downstairs, and I'm like. In my office, my room down here, the podcast thing, it's like all. It's he moved everything aside, and it's this, and it's like, yeah, I'm cool with this. And then my wife comes home, she's like, okay, so upstairs, so we have 3 stories. So he has a bedroom upstairs that he never really uses. He built that fort that takes up half the living room. They have the whole downstairs, his bunk bed and the TV in there, and now he's taken over this. We have a 9-year-old who truly controls 75-80% of our house.
And whose fault is that?
Oh, I'm good with it.
Yeah.
And she's like, we actually have a shed out there that he can make that as bomb shelter. It's like, well, I'm like,
it's cold.
Like, it's my office that he took over. If I'm good with it, what I mean? It's like, but so my game playing has been 0, but I have very much enjoyed watching him. And so so you got to go on these missions. And you got to decide, like, which one of the family members to send out, and they'll come back with, like, they come back with 2 cans of soup or a thing of water or an axe or something like that. And then periodically people come to the door and they want to make trades, and they might be raiders. So you have to decide if you're going to open the door. It's one of those, however you answer it thing. And so I told him, like, tonight after you leave, what I'll do is we can live action play it. Like, he can be in here. And it's kind of like a Dungeons and Dragons thing. You kind of have to read the story and make things up as you go, like go on these quests and stuff. And we'll time it like 60 seconds and around the house. Like, hide boxes that could have, water in it, but it could have a radioactive rat, type thing and all these. And
that's fun.
But it's a lot of reading. And you do have to do a lot of reading. So I'm like, yeah, I'm actually... When they sit down, they make a logical argument. When they're like, "Wait, Papa, hold on, X, Y, Z." I'm like, "Okay, you talked me into," because it makes sense. So, so video games can actually, be educational tools, but it's just fun, watching him. He'd rather do that than actually play the game. So,
great, good for them. It's creative.
So,
it reminds me of when I was a boy and I recreated the dice game on Price is Right in my living room. I don't know.
Did you?
No.
Did you?
No, I did not. I was trying to think of something funny to recreate from Price is Right as a joke, but the dice game was probably a like if I said Plinko, that would have been the better.
Plinko would have been great.
Yeah, stupid. All right, I'll do that over later. Anyway,
we can do it now.
No, I don't want to do it now.
Right.
I give up.
Wait, on the joke or on the
life?
over? Do you want to talk about it?
You got some time?
So we got that. What have you been watching? You can watch Blue Bloods. You can watch 10 seasons of Hawaii 5-0 now.
Great. What have I been watching?
What did you say? I called Joe because there was rumors that Blue Blood was going to be canceled. And you said something hysterical like, "How will old people know if it's Friday?"
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, they're canceling Blue Bloods. Well, how will they know that it's 7:30 on a Friday?
How will they know to take their Geritol?
Yeah, I know. I'm funny. So, what am I watching?
Tom Selleck is something.
He's a hunk. I've been bouncing around on the digital spectrum here because I'm into like Pluto TV a little bit because they have the Mystery Science Theater streaming channel and Riff Tracks.
Which I told Joe, they're coming by here on the 4th. But they're also coming to your neighborhood.
Well, it's 2 different sets. So Joel Hodgson and some puppeteers are doing Mystery Science Theater live tour that's coming to Lowell this Wednesday. The other thing that's happening near where I live in Arlington is the mad scientist who we actually ran into last year when Emo Phillips was doing that. When we went to go see Emo Phillips, they were coming out at the same time, so they're kind of redoing it. It's Trace Beaulieu and Frank Conniff.
Oh,
TV's Frank and Dr. Forrester are coming back to Arlington.
Okay,
to do their
pretend I
riffing.
don't know nearly as much as this as you do. Who's who? Like, how did they decide to? These are these guys and these are these guys. Weren't they all one big group? Did they all?
Yeah, it started off with Joel Hodgson,
Yep.
and then it was Joel Hodgson with the guy who plays Dr. Forrester, Trace Beaulieu. He did the voice of Crow as well. And TV's Frank was Frank Conniff. He was the mad scientist's assistant. And he didn't do a robot voice. That was originally Josh Weinstein. And he did the voice of Servo for 2 years. The gumball machine guy. So, but then he left, and Kevin Murphy came on to do the voice of Tom Servo. So for the core start of it, I think would be Joel Hodgson, Trace Beaulieu, Frank Conniff as the mad scientists and TV's Frank, and then it was Trace Beaulieu as Crow, and Kevin Murphy as Servo. I am boring myself.
No, because I know they're both out. It's one of those things. Like,
but on the tour, it's just Joel Hodgson. It doesn't have Kevin Murphy. So now, Riff Tracks is Mike Nelson, who took over for Joel Hodgson, and the two voices of the last incarnation of Mystery Science Theater in the 90s. They have these two other guys. It's Kevin Murphy, who does the voice of Tom Servo for all those years, and another guy named Bill Corbett, who took over when Trace Beaulieu left, and he took over for the voice of Crow. So those three guys are riff tracks, and Joel is sort of on his own. Like, Joel was actually part of the revival of the Mystery Science Theater, the Return, before they canceled that. So Joel's on his own, kind of, and the Mad Scientists are on their own.
I mean,
and riff tracks are on their own.
the reason I'm curious about these things is because I've dealt with like lots of bands and stuff like that, and I deal with like classic bands, like and pieces of shit bands like rap, who, it's funny, will, if they're all together, they'll play in front of a big crowd. Like I had them doing NASCAR, but then they keep breaking up, and three members will tour as Rap because they own the name as Rap, but then. And I know I'm using the wrong names, Biff, so don't correct me. But I know the guitarist's name is Warren DeMartini, and he has the name Rat with the drummer. They share the name, but neither one of them can use it without the other one in the band. But then the lead singer will tour as like Joe in small letters from Rat, and they'll have Rat in the big letters on the billboard and stuff like that. And the advertising, same thing. It's like the singer from Survivor, like one song, Eye of the Tiger. And dude, having that one song means the band tours as Survivor, and they'll do 200 shows at fairs and things in front of 500,000 people. But that's their job. They make an okay living touring musicians as Survivor, playing 8 or 9 songs that no one wants to hear before they play
Eye of the Tiger.
Eye of the Tiger. But then the singer tours as so-and-so from Survivor or of Survivor.
Yeah.
And it's just him with...
Well, it's like, Pink Floyd, you have Roger Waters, and then you have the rest.
Right. And so that's why I'm like... And why I don't think... But I will also say, like with Poison, like Bret Michaels was out doing 200 shows a year, the singer, in front of 1,000 people. And the guitarist, C.C. DeVille, I think is his name, was out doing 100 shows in front of 500 people. A buddy of mine who produced all their albums finally got them in the same room, talked about, and said, idiots, when you guys are together, you'll play 200 shows in front of 5,000 people a night. And the same thing with
Guns N' Roses.
Well, management lives for Duran Duran. And Duran Duran in the 80s, there was 5 members, and then 2 went off and did something called Arcadia, and 3 went off and did like Power Station, and then they would tour, and there'd be 3 members of the band, and then 2 members of the band, original band. But after like 25 years, the original 5 members got back together. And truly, that's when I met her, when she was following them around. Dude, they sold out Staples Center. Like, just the 3 of them would get 1,000, 1,500 people. But because it was the original 5 back together, they did a stadium tour. I mean, it's like...
Well, what was the name of the Spinal Tap's band when the girlfriend took over?
Oh,
it was like the star.
Spinal Tap Mark II.
Mark II, yeah. Spinal Tap Mark II.
I hope you like A New Direction.
Right, and it's just like this trippy, shitty music, and they're in like this. They're in that little half shell place.
At a amusement park where it says Puppet Show and Spinal Tap.
If I told him once, I told him 1,000 times. First Spinal Tap, then Puppet Show.
Well, you got a big dressing room. Oh, bigger than the fucking puppets.
Well, you're not as confused as Nigel, are you?
So that's why I was asking, like, because I'm interested. Like, Mystery Science Theater was game changing, and now there's, the mocking movies while they happen has become a cottage industry. But here we are in Boston, and Somerville. Alston, the others are on Lowell, so they're doing simultaneous tours.
Right, there's 3 splinters there. So yeah, you have Riff Tracks, the Mad Scientists, and Joel with Mystery Science Theater, the tour.
And I wonder how much money, like, because tickets at the one in Lowell start at like $29 and they go up to like $150. And like,
well, Mystery Science Theater is the name, and I think Joel, as the creator, owns that. So, that's why if there's going to be a continuation of the Netflix series somewhere else, then Joel Hodgson will be attached to that
somehow.
Yeah. So,
but it's not Mystery Science Without TV's Frank, as far as I'm concerned,
or Son of TV's Frank.
Yeah, which was played by Patton Oswalt.
TV's Son of TV's Frank, aka Max.
I like that a lot. So that's what you've been watching. I don't even know how to say that word. Do you know how to say that word on Netflix?
Aeon?
Aeon. Thank you. Aeon of Horus.
Remember Aeon Flux?
Yes, I do.
Yeah.
Aeon of Horus, Occult History of NASA. It's on Amazon Prime. It's not poorly done, but it doesn't have the eye candy graphics. You know what I mean? It has like the cable access graphics going from chapter to chapter. But it's interesting because like there was 3 guys, one of them who was L. Ron Hubbard, like they all were starting religions together, and then one did this and one did this and one did this, and 2 of those 3 guys, like L. Ron Hubbard could have been one of the co-founders of NASA, but he went literally. Those were the guys who started NASA, like and so it was really interesting. And I'm not talking the Nazi angle of it. I'm talking this interesting. People were trying to start NASA because they believed there was other dimensions, and it's this.
Well, I mean, think about how nations were built on religions for centuries. It's sort of the same thing. Like if you truly like drink the Kool-Aid and buy into that, there's you are put on this earth for a purpose, or there's a mankind.
This podcast.
Yeah.
Sorry. Come back,
mankind was put on here to serve a higher being, a purpose, or something, that we're just a conduit for something greater than ourselves. Then you're driven to greatness. You think that you're actually doing something for something bigger than yourself, which is
you're saying a lot because I'm fat. Is that what you're saying? Is you calling me fat?
I think you answered your own question. But you know what I mean? Like, well, and that's sort of like, it's how people get through. They cope with everything in life now. It's like, the 12-step programs that you give yourself to a higher power, that sort of thing. And that's, there's a benefit to that. But yeah, if you look at it objectively, it's like, hey, these guys are kind of nutty, but they're so nutty that it just might work.
Well, I'm watching that, and you're seeing these guys, and it's like, the studying the history of the pyramids and this and that. It all comes down to Joe's How to Serve Man.
It's a cookbook.
And then you dust off the cover and
how to serve. What is it? How to serve. How to serve man, and say how to serve. Fuck! I don't know.
Well,
God damn it! You set me up.
The Simpsons had a great takeoff of the Twilight Zone episode, which, by the way,
how to cook for humans. And it was how to cook 40 humans. Wait, there's even more space dust. How to cook for 40 humans.
Management sent me a great meme the other day. It's like Rod Sterling, and it's like, imagine, if you will, an atheist at a red light, and it turns green, and the car in front of them just sits there and has a bumper sticker, "Honk if you love Jesus." And like, that's pretty good. You got a parenting tip?
I do. Where is it? You got it for me?
Do you have a parenting tip?
Oh.
Question mark.
Over. No, I don't. I ain't got no stinking parenting tips. I come here for the tips.
Just the tips?
Hickory dickory dock.
I have to say he's a genius. So my tip is, just raise the bar. Just be better than your parents when you can. Like, for instance, I haven't taken off yet. And I will say I'm a little proud of myself for this moment. I'm in the pool with the boys at the Y, and we're at the deep end just doing a half hour straight of treading water and all this stuff. The oldest one was doing laps, but then this old person water aerobics thing took half the pool, like the shallower half. and we're treading water, and all of a sudden, my little guy goes, "Oh my gosh!" And I turn around, and out of nowhere, like 50 old ladies are on the other side of the pool, and wearing like 1920s gear and their cap and all that stuff. And he says, "Wow, there's so many old ladies." In my head, he's 9. My dad would have instantly said, "In so little time." And I, in my head, said, "So how do you not?" I went to say it simultaneously, hearing my dad say it to me, and I'm like, "Don't,
Right.
don't say, don't."
That one's for you. That little thought's just for your head.
And it's perfect. But the timing of it, it's like, it's cliche sitcom, perfect timing.
Right.
And it's
like you would have said it to the camera,
right,
as an aside, in so little time, and then you would have done the Mr. Roper smile.
But or the judges would have also accepted yelling out dibs. And it's one of those moments where I'm like, I did. Driving home, I actually missed my dad, and because he till the day he died, visiting him on his deathbed, a cute candy striper would come in. I mean, he was gross and inappropriate, but a girl would say, like, "Can I give you a hand with anything?" He goes, "Yeah, but I don't think the hospital will let you get away with it." And I'm like, "Oh no, because
he was on his deathbed,
literally." But that's how he was.
But that's why he actually had license to say.
Oh yeah, but I'm saying that's who he was.
Right.
You know what I mean? And it's like, but in my head, I heard that. I'm like, yeah, I get a little of that, that sense of humor from, and maybe my boys will get that, but it's like, yeah, not for me. Like, let somebody
we're not
else
gonna pass that torch.
Correct them. At one point, maybe I'll make, because they watch The Office, and it's like, I think when they first started watching The Office, I don't think it was funny. That's what she said. But I don't think they got the context of it. They know it now, in some regards, like 3 years later. But so I don't say that. I can't say, and I say it, but in my head, and me, it's hard for me not to.
Yeah,
it's inflective, and like, then I got to go run in the other rooms, yelling into a pillow, and but that's my parenting tip. Try, I'm not good at this, but just try to be better than the people before you who did it.
A fine tip indeed, and a fine podcast. Will someday be here, but not today. Thanks for listening to Carnival Personnel. You can catch us on Twitter, Facebook, not Instagram, not Tinder. I think we'll be on MySpace soon. I don't know. I'm stopping with the stupid jokes on the social media. I don't know. I got a couple months left on this subscription to our podcast provider. It's up in the end of May. So I got to make a decision whether or not we're going to continue this farce for another year pretty soon. But I do enjoy your company, Jacques. I'm not sure about Biff enjoying ours each week. But you know what? You don't have to download us and listen to us if you don't want to. Oh, wait. If you're friends with Jacques, you probably have to, because he'll be talking about the podcast incessantly on group text. So you might as well just get in on it, get ahead of the game, if you will. Just so you know what the fuck he's texting you about. I'm glad I'm not on those group texts. And if I do, I'll hide alerts because I can't stand them. Can't stand group texts. Holy shit. But, it is what it is. And I'm sure you can't stand this podcast any longer than I have to. So I'm going to end it here. We came in a tight hour, 10 minutes-ish. So I think we're good. So from all of us here at Television City in Hollywood, California, here's Joe saying, don't forget